Welcome back! Now it is the time to review more of Two Kinds. Because if it wasn't obvious enough by this point that I need to do it once a year, well then someone's not paying attention. By this point, as I continually read updates as they come out, I will say that for what it's worth, I do enjoy the comic. Mostly because of the art, though, as the story isn't the best in the world. Like I may have said, it's like with Fairy Tail for me. It has enough where I can't put it down, plenty to like, but no of the many faults it has. But still, I feel like I want to see when and where the point of it upping in quality starts, since the early years has had tons of back and forth style shifts, and a story that feels rushed on top of being very anime tropey. Though I don't want to discourage anyone from trying it, since everyone starts off low but can gradually get better, such as in the case of this comic. Anyway, this video I hope to cover a few more chapters, even as they start to get longer and I may end up condensing depending on the pacing and whatever. But first, a short recap. Last we left our heroes, Flora got possessed by the god of her people, forcing Trace to fight her in an attempt to free her, which led to Uker doing something before disappearing after doing his thing, Trace going nuts for a brief moment, and then finding out the town they were in was an illusion or something. Yeah, it felt like the final chapters of Bleach. Everything must be rushed. With that, we begin chapter 7 with a little more aftermath stuff. At least given what's going to happen soon, I would almost count it as such. And it seems that once again we have another art style change. Now everybody has just about the same kind of face and expression. But anyway, Flora's still a bit mopey after everything regarding Trace, Saria and whatnot, and isn't sure about what to do. In the meantime, we see Seath, who has also changed in design. Now he looks a little more realistic. Anyway, he wants to take her back now so they can have their arranged marriage for the tribes, but she refuses, saying she wants to lead her own life from now on, and even though he says he'll pretend he didn't see her, he then thinks he'll get her back somehow anyway. Well, that was pointless. She goes back to Trace, still holding on to this journal they found that is apparently emitting a blue aura. That can't be good. Trace suggests they can sleep together if she wants to, since by now they're used to each other where it should be alright. What could possibly go wrong? Are we gonna... well, you know. Ow! Hey, that's my tail, Trace. Sorry. Never done this before. I know. That's nice. Well, it was bound to happen at some point. But hey, at least we don't get to see it. And even then, would it be any different from how Dragon Age does it? Seriously, if this is considered bad to you, don't ever play a high fantasy game ever again! Meanwhile, Uker's body was found and seems he's still alive. I would think his ally would have taken him in, but I guess not. And then, human Flora! Well, okay, what was the point of that? Just a quick cutaway to let us know that Uker actually lived, just so we can skip ahead through time to mid-sex? I mean, I guess that's what this is implying, since she's doing it with a human. Thankfully covered like one, which further enforces the idea that only humans have to be censored, and the animal folk can be naked. Oh, and she apparently doesn't want to turn back into an animal, so... To be fair, I guess she's worried about always hurting Trace, given all the claw marks she leaves behind, while he's being sincere about it not being a problem. Toast to him for putting up with that and surviving. Can't think of any other fantasy relationship that could have that kind of problem.
Oh yeah, that's it. Keep going. Right there, yes.
Gallic
Yes,
gun.
yes.
Right. And now we see what became of Neutral, Ephemeral, whatever, as it seems there were other masked gods, and the one representing the human race is rather joyous that they failed. Kadron will likely be further destroyed, and sure enough, only the human race will triumph. With their powers weakened, how will they function now? Perhaps there is something I can do. There is another race. one that I have not allowed for many, many years. I have no choice. I must ensure at least some Cadron blood survives from this point forth. I wonder what she's implying. Oh, of course I know what it is, but you probably won't. Anyway, Trace wonders what will happen from now on since this isn't considered normal, and they might not even experience the things most couples have in relationships. Honestly, it shouldn't matter since you're both adults essentially. You both agreed to this relationship, and you just want to be happy. If Fantasyland allows it, and if you're compatible, I'm sure something will happen. Anyway, Seath finds out that someone sent assassins out to kill Flora, since they believe they don't need the tigers, and the tigers think she's lost anyway. So better kill her now while they think that. For this, we have two brothers, Zen and Natani. The latter telling Zen that he'll use magic to lure them out, and thus uses some sort of magic gem to conjure an illusion of Laura? Keith, it's been so long. I know, you're actually wearing pants this time. Apparently, despite his grievances, this is what his heart desired all along. And I don't know if this is just his heart causing the illusion to say things he wants to hear, but she claims that she has a sister who was jealous of them for getting married before her, that she hated Bassetin like him, and drugged Laura prior to the wedding. If this turns out to be true, then it's a bigger cop-out than most fairy tale plot twists. So I'm just going to assume he's lying to himself and not accepting reality. For now, Natani uses a poison arrow on him, which doesn't kill him instantly as they hoped, which gets Trace to come out, and sure enough, it's fight time. Even 2-on-1 and wounded, Trace does alright for himself. Flora helps out, but then of course they get in trouble. Good thing Bassetin are not only resilient to most pain, which could be explained for being partially animal like the Cadron, but are immune to most toxins, so Keith is able to get back up and fight too. Zen gets cornered and tries to get Flora to turn herself in for the sake of the clans, but Natani ain't having it since she's too resistant to them. But Zen gets stabbed by Keith, and even so, he tries to convince Flora to think about what she's doing, since without her, their people could die out? So, do you mean just the wolf people, or all Cadron in general? Probably the former, but still. Now for a mana lecture. As Cadron have to use stones to use it, Templars are able to draw it from the earth. But once you start absorbing the earth's natural energy, that becomes black mana, and well, after Zen teleports away, the journal entry shows it causes all sorts of bad things to happen. So if you thought real Trace was bad, lo and behold, it's evil Trace! Yeah, this was the form that was used during the neutral fight. And even then, I still don't see the difference between this and real Trace. Oh, he summoned the Black Dragon. That's actually not bad looking. Tom did a good job, even in this style. Actually, according to this white dragon that flies by, it's a man-made dragon, meaning it has to be one made of pure mana. Still, Trace passes out so he can't control it, so they're forced to run. They more or less take Natani in, after he got cut by Keith at one point, and the flying dragon decides to jump in to fend off the black dragon. As this goes on, Flora tries to get Natani to keep going since she did just save his life, and he owes her one. Natani contemplates between helping them or not, but eventually he decides to try and sever the link between Trace and the dragon. It works, though at first Keith thinks he was attacking, so he tries to strike, and then I think this is meant to imply he found out about Natani's little secret, but yeah, I guess he was supposed to be on top, thus making them think he's gay for a moment. We'll get into this as I believe it relates to something that was mentioned by a commenter long ago. Now we jump to a couple of Templars who mention the dragon attacks. And based on their comments, it seems the white dragon is named Nora, who is about to do something outside of attacking the dragon, but first, Trace wakes up and is determined to be rid of the evil creation by absorbing it back into him, which causes a nasty mark on his hand, and will probably lead into something that will most likely be bothersome for them all. So as Nora finishes off the dragon, we finally see Ukura awake, talking to his former slave master about how all of the Cadron will be wiped out upon the completion of the final tower. I'm almost afraid to ask what the hell they intend to do. Zap them all to death? And again, you're okay with Basseton, who are almost like cat rabbits, yet these are the creatures that must go? And now we're back to Trace and Co., because we can't keep focus on a separate scene for more than 2 pages, it seems. Or have them structured so we can have them happen after the dragon stuff, and we can have exposition for a little while, especially since we go back to the Templar discussing the recent events. Apparently the king of this land isn't happy, and the Baron here is telling the Templars they can't be doing whatever they want all the time. You know, now I'm reminded of the Order of Lorelei from Tales of the Abyss, and how they do whatever they want in the name of religion. If this story ends on top of a giant floating cube, I'll be somewhat pleased. Anyway, Nora reveals she has the animal characters asleep so she can talk to Trace about Flora. She can read minds, it seems, and knows about the things he's done for her, and wonders what he'll do if he decides to take Flora as like his wife or something. Since Trace doesn't want to go back to the Templars, and feels he has no place in the world for this relationship, Nora suggests they go to Orchard Valley. Apparently, it has a village that not even the Templars know about, where all 3 main races exist in peace. And it's on the other side of the world, too. I guess after they take care of Keith, they'll be heading there next. This does relate to something regarding a long-ass boat ride that people who've read this joked about. I'm guessing this is going to lead into the TwoKinds equivalent to Slightly Damned's St. Curtis arc. Anyway, Natani, after waking up like he was part of a coupling with Keith, which does happen later on, reveals he has a mental link with Zen, and that he's currently with their healers. Since the plan failed, the Wolf King is going to banish them, and since he has nowhere to go, Flora offers to let him come with them. I'd ask why, but even Natani disagrees with her. Listen, I told you I was sent to kill you guys. I'm a killer, obviously, and so is Trace now that I think about it. Sure, you're protected from me, because you saved my life, but there's nothing stopping me from killing that human or that other guy in his sleep. With that, he leaves, mentally telling his brother it's not worth the adventure. But once he realizes he has no weapons and there are humans about, he changes his mind and comes along. Thus we have our main cast at last, and while many companions will surely join, these are the main 4 of this story. Too bad, even with Trace around, they're still wanted, as even Trace is on a wanted poster, but they quickly get away and arrive at a port town that has yet another one of those towers. While they figure out how to get a boat ride without getting caught, we see that guy who keeps showing up everywhere, Cyrus, ushering in a celebration of when this town used to feast with Kadrin for Thanksgiving or something like that. Seriously, even the imagery Natani brings up very much feels like the common story of when Thanksgiving started. It's only because of Trace that their relationship soured though, so thanks a lot, real Trace. He finds it weird they just now started another festival, and it's possible the guildmaster of this town is no longer in command. Whatever. Festival time! Trace! Look! Ribbons! Purebred, that's for sure. Blonde hair Abel, what are you doing here? Oh, and given what happens later on, he'll be a major companion character. His name is Eric, and he says he'll help them get to the docks if he lets them check out the Kadrin characters. As in, he's totally a pervert. You have the most wonderful fur pattern, my dear. Ah, yes, the white fur goes all the way around. Well, I can't see him being likable. Eric's apparently a slave trader, as he's known for traveling around the world and collecting Kadrin. Though given what happens later, I don't know whether or not his character development will redeem him of that factor, even with his humor. I highly doubt I or anyone would find him enjoyable anyway. Since he can't buy Flora, he says he'll take them on a boat if they're willing to let him paint a picture of Flora, since he apparently likes to have women model for him. Well, good thing I don't know any other characters like him that only care about the female anatomy.
Mademoiselle, Garchu.
Garchu?
Garchu.
God damn it, bastard Sanji! And quit smiling! You're bleeding from scratch wounds! Anyway, despite this, they take the offer. Now it's time to meet that other cat catering character I once showed you. Cat. Yeah, her name's Catherine, but still, funny name. Given the perspective of her body, and Flora's, can you guess which trope this is supposed to be? What, bath time already? Anyway, she's one of Eric's catering, and while she doesn't come off as trying to take Trace off of Flora, it's pretty obvious her body keeps getting in the way. I am so enthralled. And now the twist of Natani's body. Yep, Natani's a woman, but actually, he's not. See, as we learn a bit later on, Natani considers himself male, which would more or less make him trans male. And the thing I mentioned earlier, well, apparently the way Natani is treated comes off the wrong way with some people. From what I've looked into, the reason Natani identifies as male is due to an incident that happened to him involving magic, as well as the death of his parents, and how it's causing confusion with his mental state and how his magic is self-repairing it, which I can assume is being interpreted as erasing the trans part of him. Although, given what does happen later, that might not actually be the case. Now, obviously I am not experienced enough where I can really have a say on any of this, compared to those I know that are more experienced than I am. But just from my viewpoint, given what I've seen, and may end up different depending on what happens from playing catch-up, I don't think Tom is trying to come off in a negative way. I don't think the way he handles Natani is very well done so far, given what I'm being hinted at anyway. But while the idea of magic being involved seems pretty sloppy, it's still true that there are people who struggle with figuring out what they identify as, even in a time where it's okay to go non-binary. And this is just his way of providing a possible depiction of it in a fantasy setting. Plus, Keith still hooks up with Natani later, even accepting the fact he sees himself as male. I guess what I'm saying is that yes, it is concerning the way it's presented, and it's hard to see it any other way as bad given what others experienced. So it's understandable why anyone wouldn't want to see more of this comic after reaching, I guess, chapter 11 is where it starts to pick up in this development. However, we're going to end at chapter 9 today, so we won't know for a while. But anyway, chapter 9 starts with people sleeping, including Kat in Eric's bed, it seems. And then we get a visit from his brother, Roderick, who is also a Templar. Turns out Eric bought Kat from him as a kitten, and has grown very attached to her over time. Not in a romantic relationship, I don't think. I think later on it's more to being like a brother-sister thing. Anyway, he's here because of Trace being wanted, and despite this, Eric doesn't say a thing about seeing them. Hell, if anything, Eric is more concerned about protecting Kat, as he's the only owner to not have any sort of magic bonds on her. And it's a Templar law? What, does that have priority over the King's laws? Unless the King is okay with this, I don't think you should have that much power. He only uses that sort of thing on the other slaves he has. But I think based on this, it's the start of him slowly converting from being an owner to someone willing to set them free. He does change over time, it's just a matter of how much that I'm more curious about. On the plus side, it seems Roderick is impressed that even Kat even said no to him. I think by now the art style is way more consistent in design. It looks like Tom has grown accustomed to drawing this way, that he didn't have to rapidly change every few pages. Also, despite issues during the earlier Natani stuff, it looks like the pacing is now stabilizing to where the story flow allows better characterization and exposition. Eric contemplates turning Trace and gang in, but Kat tells him he shouldn't. In fact, she wants to go with him on this boat ride since he's always going out without her, so he decides, okay. Anyway, time to get going. After some pages involving Natani telling Keith not to tell anyone about his body, Zen making fun of him for Keith liking him, and Keith even getting Natani some magic stones for him to use, we see them get on the ship while being watched by that one-winged guy and his daughter? Yeah, according to the transcripts, these are the same people from way back, and the blind girl is able to see through cats, which she's done on occasion. However, it seems her latest spy attempt is foiled by Nora, who uses the same trick to get her cat to... yeah. At least this means they do have a purpose in the story. It's just I don't know when they'll really get involved outside of this. Well, Nora Cat got on board at least. And Flora might get seasick. Too bad they'll be on this ship for an entire month. Anyway, time for painting with Eric. I wonder what Flora will come out like. As I thought, he never does anything sexual with Cat, as it really does look like he treats her as a family member rather than someone to have sex with. Though I swear, I imagine this is exactly what Yusuke would say if he had his way with An. We get a brief look into two more named slaves of Eric, Mike and Evels. Evels is one of the few dog cadron I'll see in this story, while Mike is a fox who ends up gender neutral later. At least that's what their bio description indicates. They witness the bit of character development Keith and Natani share, but mostly just to witness the secret of Natani having a woman's body. Well, Keith tricks them by saying it's Basseton black magic, so it's proof he's committed to keeping the secret. Second week in, Natani's getting irritated. Flora is more hungry than usual. Trace doesn't know how to handle the idea of marriage despite being married once. I'm getting a little impatient on when the next major plot development will start, and uh-oh, he hit a nerve. What makes you any less animal than us, huh? What makes you humans so high and mighty? I have no right to tell you what to do with your relationship, but I hope, for Flora's sake, that you base your decision on who Flora is, and not just what she is. That was actually a good point. Good job, Keith. I guess your friend's behavior is starting to rub off on you. Or maybe you're just losing your animosity or something. I say starting, since he's still distrustful, but not at Flora. So he's getting there at least. Week 3, and I think Natani is in heat from the looks of it. Just like with Flora from a long while back. While Keith does his best to help with what he thought was him getting sick, Natani soon admits to what he considers a weakness and asks him to stay with him for the night. No, it doesn't happen that way. He falls asleep, Keith leaves, that's it. Time for more issues with Cadron being possible mates. Since remember, they can only live about as long as their 20s, since their age progression is similar to real animals. I still don't get that, seeing as how Basseton are technically animals and age longer than them, but fantasy logic, sure. Trace wants to do something about that, maybe find a way with magic, even though Eric says it's impossible. But Trace is determined, and I'm afraid of what that may lead to. So let's instead have Flora interact with Cat. It doesn't lead into anything big, but another body comparison comment. At this point, there's really not much to comment on. It's mostly dialogue with each other, but with little happening besides a little bit of character development here and there. But hey, at least we have Flora in full clothing again, even if it's for a moment. Only major thing now is Trace wants to extend Flora's lifespan, but stops when it's time for a foot massage. Life is short, so make the best of it by making love to a tiger girl. Natani receives a mental message from someone using Zen's body, telling him to continue following Trace on behalf of their king, as he may be useful for this war that's coming. Because, as Zen reveals in the morning, they killed the human king? Jeez, while all this melodrama is going on, some really interesting stuff was happening off screen. I mean, they could have pulled a One Piece and showed us that, but then again, I don't think he would have known how to do that, so alright, you're still learning at this point. Anyway, the chapter ends with them approaching the Basseton Islands and getting our first glimpse at what I assume will be our next major antagonist for a while. Boy, reading through that didn't feel long, but then again, it was only about 5 months of pages this chapter went through. So, even though not much happened this time, I will say, I'm starting to see improvement in some areas. The story doesn't feel as rushed anymore, though it's going to take a while to get used to, as I think it might be a bit too slow at this stage in time. But the art style did gradually become more consistent to where any change in style is subtle. I like to think this period in time is where Tom starts to find his groove in the way of establishing his storylines and finding that one style which fits well the most and improve from there. While I still don't think Natani's character development is going to be handled all that well, though at least Keith is showing more of him changing for the better. Eric is okay. He's funny, but he's got a long way to go before I can take him seriously, and he has to stop seeing Cajun as slaves, of course. And Cat is... Given what's about to happen, I think next year I'll see about going through whatever storyline the Basseton Islands bring us. So that can give us plenty of material. Otherwise, I'm sorry if nothing came of anything here, other than this being the point of gradual improvement. But don't worry, next time I finally do a review on something I wanted to do sooner. Stay tuned for when I review the One Piece film, Gold.